I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and I'm sure you've met a lot of Kingstonians before, or Jamaicans before who said they're from Kingston. Well, on my passport, a lot of people born in Kingston was born at the hospital, and the hospital is KPH, Kingston Public Hospital, but they call it Lineen. The reason I don't know, but that is the name they call it, Lineen. Maybe it's lying in, I don't know, but I wasn't born at home. I wasn't born at the hospital. I was born at home, and I was born on King Street, and King Street is the main street in Kingston. Maybe that's the reason why they call it King Street. And on King Street, there is in the middle of King Street, there is the parish church clock. And like the Bovels in London, they say if you're born under the Bovels, you are a true Londoner. Well, if you were born anywhere in the sight of the clock in Kingston, that means you're a true Kingstonian. Well, I was born at 100 King Street, so that makes me a true Kingstonian. Well, in Jamaica, at that time, when I was very young, they only had one radio station. And that radio station was RGR, Radio RGR. And to listen to any good music, or should I say, we used to say foreign music, that means music from abroad. You would listen to a radio station called WINZ, which was in Miami. And Miami's only 90 miles from Jamaica. So the airwaves, you would get, good reception, and people would listen to music from then. Well, my mom was very musical, and so was my dad. So my mom, had a KB radio, and that gave good reception that you could pick up Miami and listen to the music. And my mom was bowled over by the old jazz, R&B, rhythm and blues, and the old doo-wop, Roscoe Gordon, and all that, and she loved to dance. So whenever some good music came on the radio, she would throw some legs, and I used to love dancing with her. We listened to guys like Sam Cooke, Nat King Cole was one of the main singers that I sincerely loved, and I just hankered onto his music, Then there were guys like Jackie Wilson, because Jackie Wilson was the ultimate showman. Well, even before that, there was guys like Amos Milburn, which sang a song called One Scotch, and that's very popular even today. I went to a dance the other night and heard One Scotch being played, and there were the Bobettes, that sang Mr. Lee, so, we listened to
country music.
Yeah, we listened to country music, a lot of country music, as a matter of fact, and I think it was the country music that we listened to which inspired us, it inspired me to start writing good songs. If you listen to most country songs, are stories of an experience, and when you start being inspired to write songs, you start thinking about your experiences, and you can relate to it quite easily. I'm afraid that that's not the case today. The early days, guys like Jamaicans, the sound system era for me was when I was like 12, 13, listening to great sound system like King Edward's the Giant. I used to leave home. Mind you, every time that I went to a dance, when I came home, it was gospel. I got a whipping from my mom because I stayed out late, or you came back early in the morning, so you'd get a thrashing, but that didn't matter. The music was great. You want to be out there, listening to great music, and listening to the music, knowing that, these were Jamaican guys who were singing these songs. You had to go out and listen. So the beating didn't really matter. We used to go to, they used to have, every holiday, they would have a big dance in several different places. Like, we used to go to Hope Gardens, which is the botanical gardens in Kingston, and that was like 6 miles from downtown Kingston. And they had this place called the Shady Grove, which has been duplicated in a lot of places where Jamaicans are. They have a very Shady Grove here in London. They have one in New York, everywhere, just to duplicate what used to happen back in Jamaica. But every holiday, they used to have a big holiday. I think it's the 20th of November. There used to be a big holiday, and we used to go to Shady Grove. I was a kid, like 15, 16, and to see the girls spinning, they had the dresses were wide, and they had this thing called crinoline underneath the dresses, and when they spun, the dresses would go up, and you could see their drawers. Oh, it was. But it's just to see how they danced, and it was so beautiful to see. It was a thrill, But I remember one night, I went to this dance, and it used to cost like $1.50 shillings, 1 and 6pence, and sometimes 2 shillings to go into a dance. And 2 shillings was a lot of money, because you could buy 2 loaves of bread with that, and maybe some codfish, saltfish, or fried fish and bread. 2 bob was a lot of money. Anyway, I remember one night, I went to a dance on Lisson Road, and while there, I was looking for a way to crash into the dance, not paying to go into the dance. So you could try and walk through the side of the fence or climb over, some barbed wire, but you had to get into the dance. Anyway, I had a friend, who was much older than I was, but he was one of the known bad guys in Kingston. He was like a big, fit guy. And when you hear about bad men in Jamaica, this guy was a bad man, because all he did was drink juices, and lift weight every day. And his chest was big and shiny, and, and he was a friend of mine. So we used to call him Tucky. Tucky Swangs was his name. And when I looked, I saw him coming down the road. And when he reached up to me, he says, "Welcome, Cobra." I say, "Hey, Tucky." He says, "What are you doing?" I says, "I want to get into the dance, man. Can you put me in?" And he just picked me up and threw me over the fence, and I dropped. But I tore off half of my trousers, and my shirt was torn. And I was thinking, my mother's going to kill me with torn trousers and shirt. So when I looked, I saw some of my friends walking, coming through the gate, and I said, "Did you pay this?" They said, "It's a free dance, man." I started as a contortionist. And the reason for that was a great man from Trinidad, I think he was, called Joseph Clemendor. He came to Jamaica, and he was a one-man show. And this guy was a genius, because he sang, he danced, and he did an act called the Cobra Act, wherein he would bend himself into all different shapes. He would go through his hand, he would put his hands through his legs, with his legs crossed over the back of his head. And, this tall guy became that big. So it was fascinating to see this guy. And he was a showstopper. And he made the mistake of putting in the paper that any person who could do one of his acts, he would give £20 to. At that time, £20 could buy a car. It was a lot of money. So, or was it £50? Something like that. But anyway, he made, a threat that anyone who could do this, because he didn't believe anyone could do this. But I was doing these things, as a kid, not knowing what I was doing. I was putting my legs, over my head, my hands through, and I'd walk on my hands like a crab, and, it was crazy to see this. So when this guy, said he'd give a reward, there was a friend of my dad's who knew me and knew that I did these things. So he took me to the offices of the promoter and said, "We come to collect the money." And he says, "Get on the table, do your thing." And I did it. And the guy was fascinated. He said, where were you trained? And I said, "I wasn't trained," because I was just 7 years old then. So he took me, on stage, and introduced me, and the next day it was in the newspapers, you know, the Cobra Man and the Cobra Boy. So after the Cobra Man left, I started getting shows, putting me, you know, they were putting me in the theater with a theater group called two of the best guys in Jamaica called Bim and Bam. They were comics, and they had a show, and all the, you know, the good singers in Jamaica were on the show, and I came on as the Cobra Boy, and it was great because at that time in Jamaica, no one was you didn't get a lot of money to perform, but the Cobra Man, after each of his shows, he would have someone get a hat and walk through the audience holding the hat, and people would put money into it. So I adopted the same thing. So every show, I would come off with maybe 20 or 30 pounds, you know, just in change, like 10p's, you know, 20p's. At that time it was shillings, you know, pennies, you know, 2 and 6. And if you saw a 5-shilling paper go into the hat, but, you know, that's where I actually started.
Oh, the games people play now, every night and every day now.
Let me start by saying how I actually met Coxsone Dodd. It was a friend of mine called Jackie Estick, and most of the Studio One albums, if you look at the back, most of the liner notes were written by Jackie Estick, and Jackie and I actually went to school, you know, and, you know, after I came back from the States, the first person that I got in touch with was Jackie to find out what the musical scene was like in Jamaica, and he took me straight to Coxsone Dodd, you know, and I just started, you know, doing, you know, recording, listening, and I found out that this was the best place, you know, in the island to record, Studio One. He was the most knowledgeable person as far as music was concerned, even though he didn't read and write music, but he was very knowledgeable, and he was a nice guy. So I started my career, you know, recordings with Coxsone. And I remember one of the first songs that, you know, he gave me to sing, it was a song called In the Summertime. And then, you know, he started, you know, feeding me songs, you know, but I used to like going to Studio One because at that time, you know, all the young, you know, budding, you know, singers, you know, were just a nice bunch of guys, and the vibe was really, really good because we'd sit out in the yard. There was the mango tree, you know, whenever a mango would drop, you know, 10, 20 guys would be diving for the same mango, you know, and it was just great vibes, you know. Somebody lit one cigarette and would pass all the way around to everybody else, you know, because that was the way it was, you know. Everybody was friends, you know. There was like an allegiance to Coxsone because you had other recording studios like Duke Reed, you know. But what I found out afterwards is like all the guys who recorded at Duke Reed, they would bring the same songs to Coxsone and record them. So whenever Duke Reed said, "I've got an exclusive," Downbeat had the same exclusive because it was a money thing, you know what I'm saying? Because if you got £2 to record a song with Duke Reed, you could do the same thing at Coxsone, you know, and get a couple of quid also. So people just spread it around. But yeah, you know, in recording for Dodd, I found out that, you know, this guy, you know, knew so much about the business because he would listen to a song and he would come to say, "Mark, this song is for you." And even though I would like that song, he said, "No, this is not your song. You can't manage this one. This one is for Mark." You know, so he was knowledgeable in that way, and most of his songs were hits. So I remember when I recorded the Bob Andy song. You know, I thought it was an American song. You know, and he said, "I got a song for you to experience. I want you to record this."
She's always saying we were meant to be. Somehow she thought I'd be her kind.
talking about the first time I went into a studio, I was blown away. You know, I was mesmerized, like I guess everybody, that the first time you walk into a recording studio, you know, or a photographic studio, the same thing. You know, you're blown away because sometimes it doesn't add up to your expectations. Sometimes it's way past your expectations, right? So it's either they or they, right? But I was blown away when I walked into a recording studio, because to hear your voice coming through speakers, you know, and then seeing it on a bit of plastic, and it's coming out of that, is mind blowing, yeah. But today, then like 40, 50 years ago, you know, when we first started recording, the equipment. We recorded on a record machine called a Revox, which was 2 tracks. Today you can record with the computer. You can record up to 1,000 tracks. But believe me when I tell you this in all sincerity, I prefer the recordings then than I do the recordings now, because with all the multi-tracking that you're going to be doing, the recordings then, to me, right, are much better than today. When Mr. Dodd gave me the track and said, "This is where I want you to record," I rehearsed the song, practiced it, and then we went in the studio, the band did the music, and then we were going to voice it. And Mr. Dodd had 3 girls, his backing vocalists, that used to, you know, do most of his work. And this day I recorded, you know, the voice, but I needed, the girls were going to come in and do the backing vocals. But that same afternoon, you had guys who were waiting to go into the studio. So after you did yours, the next guys would go in, and so on and so forth. But I was sitting outside waiting for the girls to come, and they didn't show up. And Bob was getting anxious because he wanted to go somewhere else. So he wanted to go in and record his song, and Bob Marley. So we were out there, and Bob was strumming his guitar, and then he turned to me and he says, "Cobra, when are you going to record the things, man? Finish your song." I said, "Well, I'm waiting on the girls to do the backing vocal." And he said, "But them now come, make we go do it." So we went in, you know, and we did the backing vocals, you know. And when we were finished, you know, it sounded fantastic, better than what the girls would do.
So experience to be taken for a ride. I know it's not my first ride.
So that evening after Bob finished his recording, we hung around, and Mr. Dodd came. As usual, every evening he would play all the songs that were recorded that day and listen. And he would go halfway through and he stopped, go to another one until he found the one that he wanted. And he'd think, yes, this is one I want. So he started playing To Experience. And when he was playing it, he stopped and he says, "Boy, the girl them sound good, man. The girl them sound fantastic." And Bob said, "Sir D, me a call girl?" And he said, "No, the girls who did the back, you say, me and Cobra do it, you know." And I said, "That's a boy, you sound like angels, man." But Bob was really annoyed, you know, but Mr. Dodd was saying, you know, the girls, you know, because you can't call Bob a girl. There were a couple of songs which is they've become really underground hits, and what you would call iconic songs. I've got one called "The Break."
I feel the inspiration coming on strong. The break, the break.
I think I was about 18, 19, somewhere around there. It came out as Bob Melody. Not Winston Francis, and it had another name on it, which I can't remember. There was also one called It Ain't, which was by Lloyd and Randolph, but it's a guy called Lloyd and myself, you know. And these songs were actually produced by a guy called Johnny Golden. I remembered that, you know, some of the guys were recording in world records, you know, at the time. So, and there were guys like Ox Brown, you know, Jackie Jackson, who plays with Toots and the Maytals, you know, Winston Wright, you know, one of the best keyboard players in Jamaica, you know, deceased. But I knew they were there recording, and as long as they're recording, there's weed. So we said to the girls, let's go down there. So we jumped in the car, 6 of us in a Vauxhall, in a Zephyr Zodiac, you know, crammed, but, you know, we huddled together and we drove and we got down to the recording studio. When we got there, the guys were just finished recording. And when I walked in, you know, and Johnny, you know, said to Winston, you got anything we can smoke? And he said, yeah, we still have weed, man. And we all started billing some joints and, you know, and Johnny Golden turned to me and he said, why don't you do a song, Winston? Because tonight could be a big night, you know. And I said, nah, man. He says, yeah, man, you could it could be a break, you know. And Winston got up and he said, yeah, I've got a nice rhythm, Winston, that I think you would like. And he started playing, you know, this, you know, on the keyboard. And Ox just took out his guitar and Jackie got up and Paul, and everything just started turning over. And I stood up and wrote the song in which I said, the time has come for me to make up my mind. It's been so long, I wanted to sing my song, but something was holding me strong. Give me the reason to express my song. I feel the inspiration coming on strong. I need a break, a break, a break. The song was recorded, and I didn't hear it again for maybe 20 years, until I was in New York and heard it. And when I said, man, that's me. And this guy said, yeah, big tune by Bob Melody. Well, we know it's you. You know.
The break.
Well, Mr. Fix It, one of my biggest tracks, and to date, I think it was a stroke of luck why I actually wrote Mr. Fix It, because I was going to school in the States then, in Miami, and every time I'd come home, you know, I have a brother who always had problems with girls, always had problems. He was falling in and out of love with girls. And every time that, you know, he had problems, he had to call me and say, come and talk to Cutie for me, because, you know, she said she don't want to talk to me no more. And I was the guy who brought things back together. So this day, you know, I just came home. My suitcase wasn't open yet. And in runs my brother. He says, put the bag down. Come, you got to come with me. I said, where? He says, I want you to come and talk to Cutie, man, because she don't want me to come inside her house. I says, hang on a minute, Ricky. I says, you haven't even asked me if I'm well. You know, he says, I know you're well, man. Come, I am not well. Come sort me out. So I said, hang on a minute. I said, you think I'm some kind of Mr. Fix-It? And he said, yeah, you're my Mr. Fix-It. And that's how I wrote the song. You know, if you're feeling lonely because you're one and only, boy has found a girl and ran away, just reach for your phone. You know, I'll be there at home. My name is Fix It. You know, and it's because of my brother. And
that's perfect. That's great.
Let me say one more thing about Mr. Fix It, because like I said, most of the recordings that we did in Jamaica, we didn't get paid for it. Right, and the same thing as Mr. Fix It. You know, Mr. Dodd is a great guy, a good friend, but we didn't get any money out of it until a group from Birmingham called UB40 recorded Mr. Fix It. And when they did, you know, that was my first payment, and what a payment it was, because that was from the first check, royalty check that I got, you know, and also it was part of by publishing, because of that publishing deal, I received enough money for me to pay it on my first home. So thanks to UB40, believe me, guys, thanks a million. You know, you guys are great. You know, my first house, you did it. Give me the reason to express my song. I feel the inspiration coming on strong. I need a break, a break, a break. The song was recorded, and I didn't hear it again for maybe 20 years.